Welcome back to the Marketing Minute, where we take marketing trends, principles, and best practices and turn them into easy to digest segments that you can apply to your center's marketing. My name is Delaney Walker, and I have the privilege of being a part of the Extend Web Services team. Extend is the digital marketing service of Heartbeat International, and my team has the pleasure of working with pregnancy health organizations around the country and around the world. Today, we're diving into the do's and don'ts of social media to help you establish an engaging online presence. And to do that, we have with us social media extraordinaire Morgan of the Extend Web Services team. Morgan, how are you doing today?
I'm excited. I think social media is a great way for centers to just grow their center itself and grow their mission. And it's exciting whenever I can at least try to help and give some tips and tricks on how to grow your social media.
Based on what I have seen between you and our clients, you definitely help them. And it seems like you guys have a fun time as well. And I hope that's how people feel listening to this, that they walk away with some instruction. Maybe they have a little fun as well. And Morgan, I know some people listening might say, like, why do I need social media? I have a website. Because social media can be a hassle. So why is it important to have these social accounts and to keep them active?
Yeah, so website is great. It's a great form of just all your content, all your information, what you offer, your service, everything like that. Social media is a way to guide your audience to your website. Social media is very much a brand awareness element where you're just trying to get your center's name out there, your phone number out there, your logo, your colors, your mission, everything like that. So, social media is more so trying to repetitively get your stuff out there. If it ends in your audience giving you calls from your social media, that's great. But a lot of times it really is just a guiding factor to your website or even your center. So obviously, website very important. Social media, I feel, is important to really start building that trust and building that relationship,
Mm-hmm.
and then hopefully making them feel more comfortable to either call or visit your website.
Yeah.
Because social media is a relationship building tool,
Mm-hmm.
and we'll get into how best to do that later on. But I do feel as though you can start building that personal um, relationship with your audience based on what you post.
That is so true. And I know in terms of like keeping a social media account active, some people will go to Facebook or Instagram to see when was the last time this organization posted. Like I know I've done that. I can see their website, but then I'm like, how active are they on social media? And if they haven't had a post for like 6 months, it makes me wonder if they're even still open.
Yeah. So that is another thing we'll get into later, but getting consistent posts out there and really
Hmm.
showing your audience that you're engaged is so important, because
Yeah.
if you're not showing that you're engaged and if you aren't consistent in getting your posts and your information out there, like you said, people might not even know that you're out there, or maybe you were at one point and you aren't now. So it is really important to stay on top of posting and keeping your information updated and making sure you are having a constant presence online.
Right. One of the interesting things about social media is just how different generations are engaging with it. You know, we have Gen Alpha and Gen Z and the millennials and Gen X, all these different people that are engaging with social media, and they're doing it differently as well. What have you seen, Morgan, or what do you know about how different generations are engaging with those social posts?
Yeah, so it is so incredible to see how different generations use each platform differently and how they use all platforms differently, how they view social media, what they use it for. The younger generation, Gen Alpha, they, I think their number one reason they use social media, I read, is just purely for entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
And then following after that was communication. So even as this generation is getting older, that's good to know, so that you can know that they're probably more comfortable about communicating with you through social media. So communication, entertainment, and entertainment could be anything. They could be looking at an inspirational post, and yeah, it's not entertaining, but it could draw their attention anyways. So it is good to know that as they're getting older, know what really draws their eye in and what really helps them learn and grow through social media. And then Gen Z, 18 to 25-year-olds, that is typically the audience of pregnancy centers. That's usually the age range that they're trying to target. And that generation, they use social media purely for learning purposes. I'm sure they use it for entertainment and other things, but they really use it for information, learning, trying to get things out of social media that they either didn't know before or didn't know well before.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's great for centers right now because you want to provide information and you want to draw them
Right.
in. And so knowing that they really want these informational posts and content oriented social media platforms, I think it's really helpful for centers to know that they can reach them through those types of posts and content. And then anything older, millennials, and so on and so forth, they use social media mainly to connect, converse, just keep in touch with people and
Mm-hmm.
still informational. They want to learn things, but they really do use social media for connecting with their friends, their family. And that is good for centers because maybe they see that and they have a friend or a family member who needs help that's in one of those younger generations, and they can help point that friend or family member, whoever, to a social media account of a center. So I do think it's important to know how each generation uses social media.
Oh, yeah. I think it's great. So centers shouldn't be surprised if somebody from Gen Alpha, like a 13, 14-year-old, reaches out with a question, because we do know that 13 and 14, they have pregnancy scares as well. That Gen Z period, they are the ones that at this point would be most receptive to those informational posts that might be dropped on a client social media site. Millennials obviously feel comfortable reaching out through social media as well, which is great. And millennials are interesting because they could be a client, they could also be a donor. And I like that the older you get, the more they engage socially. So having those donor side social accounts are important as well. I think today we're not that you can't apply these principles to both donor and clients, but I think we're primarily focusing on that client social media side, right?
Yes, I do think a lot of the do's and don'ts can go either way.
Mm-hmm.
And I do think some people will ask, why wouldn't I just have one social media account? Why do I need to have two? And we advise on having two just because
Right.
your content for your donors versus your content for your clients is very different. And client, you're trying to help reach someone, you're trying to give them information about your services. For
Mm-hmm.
donors, it's more obviously asking for donations, fundraising, but also inviting them to different events you have and just showing them why they're donating.
Oh,
So they are
yeah.
very different accounts. And I'll even say in the do's and don'ts what a few are for different accounts. But
Wonderful.
um, yeah, but they are very different.
Okay. So I know for most people listening today, managing social media is just one of many tasks on their to-do list. Morgan, I'm so happy that we can provide them with some basic do's and don'ts. Why don't you take it away with I believe it's 7 do's, right?
Yep, 7 do's, 5 don'ts. So the most important do would be staying consistent. So obviously, I know many people taking on this task. You have, like Delaney said, a lot of tasks you have to do and you have to think about. So I think the easiest way to stay consistent with just posting in general would be creating a content calendar. And a lot of platforms actually provide this feature on their platform, whether it's scheduling ahead, you can schedule a time and a day, which is so helpful. That's a new thing they've done in the past couple of years. And if you have, say, Meta Business Suite, you can post ahead. So there are different platforms you can use for social media, where you can schedule ahead and really create a specific content calendar. Because posting regularly, that is the best way to get your brand out there, get your information out there, maintain visibility.
And the best thing about these do's and don'ts is they have been cultivated by somebody who is in social media every day. So when Morgan tells you to set a calendar to schedule these posts or to design them, I think this is what you do yourself. Don't you have a calendar that you follow, Morgan?
Yeah, so I have a calendar for each and every center that I run their social media for. And it is just so much easier because I don't have to worry about thinking if it posted, if I had to do something manually. I can really just put my graphic in my calendar, and there are a ton of different platforms like Cloud Campaign, Hootsuite. There are so many different ones that you could use to schedule and post for you. But I do know if you are looking for a no cost scheduler, I do know social media platforms typically provide a way to schedule your content, which is very, very helpful.
This definitely sounds like something that could be a blog a blog post if we haven't already done one. So guys, keep your eyes out. That might be Morgan's next one. And in the meantime, what is number 2 on the do list?
Number 2 is engaging regularly with your audience. Building relationships with your audience is so important to either get them to feel comfortable enough to contact you or get them to go to your website. This can all start with just engaging with them, whether it's liking their comments, responding to their comments. If they're messaging you, make sure you respond promptly to their messages and their comments. And that is a really good way to build that trust and that relationship right away with your audience. It can be hard sometimes because sometimes you miss a comment, but typically we say if you can answer it within 24 to 48 hours, just so they don't forget that they commented.
Sure.
It really means a lot to your audience, and it shows that you really truly care about building that relationship and keeping that relationship with them.
I like it. But what about when they get those negative comments? What are your tips for that?
Yeah, so depending on what the negative comment is, I think the best way to, I guess, deal with those comments is to respond in a very professional and cool tone. Because obviously you don't want to stir anything up. You don't want to turn people away. And some centers will choose just to delete or hide the comments if it's someone that just doesn't agree with your mission. Sometimes they will respond and just say, I understand how you feel, but this is what we believe. But you just have to remember that other people will see how you respond. So
Yeah.
you want to respond in a manner that shows your true audience who you are and how you're just here to help. Yeah, so you can go at it differently, but I do think responding in a very professional way is probably the best way to go.
I like how you said that you want to kind of however you respond basically is going to show who you are. And that goes so perfectly with your third do, because I think this one also shows perfectly who these pregnancy care centers are.
Yes. So the next one on my do's list is to share inspiring stories or testimonials, anything like that. Sharing these stories really puts a personal feel on your center, social media wise, because you can look at a center social media or someone's social media and see purely informational post, which is great, but that is a very, I guess, sterile environment on social media. And showing a client's journey and how they overcame such a hard time in their life through this center, I think really impacts your other people in your audience just because they see I'm not the only one in this situation. It's happened to other people. And it shows that they really can reach out to you and they feel a lot more comfortable talking with you or reaching out to your center via phone call or even in messages on Instagram or Facebook.
Oh, yeah.
It's just, it really provides that inviting and welcoming tone to your social media.
Yeah, I love that. And it goes hand in hand with what you're advising for that fifth do.
Yeah, because the fifth do is including calls to action. And it can be a simple call to action like call us today or visit our website or anything like that, just to encourage your followers to connect with you or contact you, to visit your website or share your post, like your post, or even encouraging you to talk to someone or
Mm-hmm.
to connect with the center or anything like that. Those calls to action really touch on like, we're here to help, but this is what you can do to help yourself as well. So yeah, calls to action, very important and very interactive, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
for your audience, which is good because then they just need to look for 2 seconds to catch their eye. And if they're
Right.
saying, do this today, it's going to catch someone's eye.
I totally agree. Now, I'm really curious about your next do because I feel like it'll look different for like a client side and a donor side. And I know earlier in the podcast, we mentioned there are going to be some do's that you would do differently depending on which sites you are building them for. So walk us through that sixth one and how it might differ between your client and donor site.
Yeah. So number 6 is highlighting your mission. Obviously, for a client face social media, that mission is reaching her, making sure they know that your main goal is to help them. But for a donor facing account, it would be more for showing why you do what you do. So whether it's an inspirational story of, hey, this is why we're asking for your donations, or your mission could be including your donors in different events like a diaper drive. I think highlighting that mission and making sure, like, yes, you're asking these people to donate on your donor side, but you also want to show them the joys of what they're donating for. You don't want to just
Mm-hmm.
consistently ask, oh, can you give us money? Can you give us money? Like, you still want to involve them. Back to number 1, staying consistent. You want to stay consistent with your mission.
Oh, yeah, staying consistent with your mission. And then I really like the two things that you highlighted about the mission. One, it's going to look different for your client and donor site. And then two, how it makes the people feel. So you're really giving that you are here for her, you are supporting her, you're ready to walk alongside her in this journey. And then in the other one, it's, hey, look at how you empowered and equipped us to
Mm-hmm.
walk alongside her, which I think is really cool. And I think we have made it to the final do on your list.
Yes. Number 7 is collaborate with local partners. This can look different depending on where you are, who you are affiliated with, different things. A lot of centers will collaborate with their local church,
Mhm.
whether it's them putting a diaper drive on together or anything like that. It's really important to highlight that on your social media just because, one, it builds brand awareness. Again, it shows that consistency, but it also shows that you are involved in the community. Those different partners you collaborate with can all
Mhm.
speak to who you are. I think if you could find different organizations, churches, whoever to collaborate with, and that doesn't even mean that they have to be right next to you. It can just be purely on social media that you're collaborating
Sure.
with someone. And we have found really good success with that on Heartbeats level because we've been able to spread our awareness with different organizations like us, with smaller centers. We've been able to further that engagement, which has been great.
Oh, sure. Is this something that is primarily for a donor social media, or is there ways to do it with both? Because I've honestly, like back in the day when I was at a center, I primarily highlighted partnerships on our donor side and not our client
Hmm.
side. So what does that look like?
Yeah, so mainly it would be for your donor side.
Okay.
Um, I do think there are probably ways to have it on your client side,
Mm-hmm.
whether you're collaborating with another center, and that could look something like just spreading your services or showing that this center has these services and this center says that you have these services.
Maybe if another place was you were partnering with someone to do a workshop or something. Like there's a nonprofit in town that specializes in
Mm,
helping you build a certain skill set. I think that could be a really cool client side because again, we're speaking to that person and they
yeah,
might need like the resources they need. It could be cool to talk about those. I also think that would be great because especially if you're in an area that has some really engaging nonprofits that are reaching those in need of certain services, you might have some cross between the
yeah,
people that they see and the people that you see. So that could be a good way to use it. Okay, we've come to the five don'ts. It's time to drop the hammer, Morgan. What are the
yeah.
things people should be avoiding? And don't hold back, just put it all on the table.
So the first don't I have is don't be surprised if people get upset or push back on your posts. There are people out there that will disagree with what you do, what you post, and that's inevitable. People will push back. They'll send negative comments. It will happen. You cannot let it affect you. You know your mission. You know the truth of your mission. You know the importance of your mission. But that's where it kind of goes back to our engaging with your audience. You'll get negative comments, and how you respond, like I said earlier, shows who you are and how you deal with conflict. And
Mhm.
if you have a professional, cool toned response, that I think will impress your audience and it will draw them in even more. So don't be surprised if you get those negative comments, but also make sure you're handling it well.
Yeah, the CEO at the center that I worked at back in the day used to say, we're homeland missionaries. Instead of going out into the highways and byways, the highways and byways come through our doors. And typically we were
Mm-hmm.
talking about the clients, but it also could be these people that you're interacting with. And your tone may be professional, your tone may be warm, but one, people are watching you, and two, you have no idea how your response is going to impact that person. They may go on
Right.
to attack many more centers, or
Yeah.
their engagement with you may give them food for thought that they just can't shake. So I think this is a great don't get discouraged. Some people even think that when they get negative comments, that means they're doing something right. There's a split view on that one. But don't get discouraged. Don't let it keep you from the mission before you. Okay, Morgan, back to you. What's number two?
Yes. Number two is don't forget about analytics. I know that sounds scary. There are a lot of platforms that allow you to view your analytics. How I go about it is each month, the first of every month, I look at the previous month and I see what posts really drew people in, what got the most engagement. Did we gain followers? Did we lose followers? And that you can just strictly look at your social media and see if you gained or lost followers. So even that, if you don't want to really dive deep in all of the analytics, because there are so many different analytics you can have, and that can get a little overwhelming, I know. But even just looking at your follower count on, are we growing or are we staying the same? What can we do to boost up for next month? I do think analytics is a key element to growing your social media. Just staying on track with what your social media is doing. Just because you might have some drops, and that's
Yeah,
just how social media is. You may lose more followers than you did the previous month, and it can just be that month, and it can boost back up in 1 month or 2 months or even 3 months, and you
sure.
just can't get discouraged. You have to just keep on track because social media is ever changing.
Oh, sure. And what I like about analytics is you never know when the algorithm's going to start acting weird or when an algorithm's going to shift, or maybe you
Yes.
do, maybe they do announce it, I don't know, but I feel like sometimes it shifts and you're like, what happened? And it's because one of the platforms, the algorithm for how they're presenting posts has changed, and maybe it has downgraded, or it makes the things that you're posting less obvious to even the people following your
Mm-hmm.
page. So what I like about the analytics is you can go in, and even when you're experiencing a downtrend, if you've had a post that has performed well, it's like, okay, what was it about this post that might have reached them? So
Mm-hmm.
maybe it was a post on the donor side where you were like, she chose life. She said yes. And it's something that's really celebratory. And when you have a post like that, it's hard to stop people from like sharing it. So maybe that
Right.
is something that managed to bust through whatever the current algorithm is. And I'm not trying to add confusion by talking about algorithms. It's just one of the social media fancy words that I happen to know. What you really need to take away from this is looking at analytics. Like Morgan said, don't get discouraged. Just mine for information and then try and duplicate successes the next month.
Yeah, because sometimes the the loss of followers isn't really related to your content. Um,
Mm-hmm.
there are times where specifically Instagram and Facebook, they will go through and delete just a mass amount of inactive or bot accounts, which is
Right.
just a spam account. And so bigger companies will see huge losses
Mm-hmm.
in a day, but it's just because these platforms are doing a clean out.
Right.
So that happens. So if you see in the midst of a day a huge drop, don't be alarmed. It is just these accounts that aren't really your audience.
Morgan, I know for this next don't that you feel passionate about really getting this one across to people. So why don't you take it away?
Yes, I do. So, number three is keeping track of your login information.
Mm-hmm.
There's always shifting in roles or responsibilities. And with that, a lot of times your login information can get lost. And that can be really hard because, especially if you are having a marketing group run your social media, there's no way for them to get it. And so, what I really, really stress is to somewhere safely, securely have your login information. It would be nice to have more than one person have the login information just so that you know it is secure and someone does have it.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. And a couple things to consider is it's good to have the email that's tied to the social media sites. Make it an email that even if that person left, you have access to. So it's one of your center emails. It's not like Gmail or Yahoo or something. Another
Mm-hmm.
thing is the reason we are emphasizing this is because it is really obnoxious to try and gain access to a site that you no longer have either the email access to, or you just can't find the password. Sometimes the social media platforms can be very difficult to work with. I know Morgan has
Mm-hmm.
gone 9 rounds with some of them. Yeah.
Yes, they, especially in the past couple of years, they have really just increased their security, which is great, but it also makes it really hard to make new accounts.
Mm-hmm.
Um, they're very, very touchy on how to make a new account. And sometimes making an account for a center gets flagged.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Meta is making changes, so we're hoping that that helps and that they lessen that security in a good way, obviously.
Sure.
But I do know that it can be frustrating trying to get into social media without having all the information or trying to create a new account. And I think just the easiest way to avoid these issues is just to keep track of that login information.
Okay. And what is number 4 on our don't list?
All right, number four is avoid overloading posts with text. Obviously, you have a lot of information. Your website, you have all your free services, you have your contact information. Yes, you want to get that out there, But social media, your goal is to catch the eye of your audience within, I would say, 5 seconds.
Mm,
And in 5 seconds, they do not have time to read a ton of information.
right.
My advice and what I have found to work best would be short sentences, like less
Okay.
than 5 words, honestly, and just really engaging designs. Whether it's a simple post like call us today, make call us today the hierarchy of the graphic. That way, when people are looking, it's like, oh, okay, I see it, I read it, it catches my eye. When you start putting paragraphs on your content, it's just going to make people keep scrolling. And
Hmm.
that's not what you want. So it's really important to keep your post concise and
Hmm.
impactful at the same time. And your visuals are such a big part of those posts.
Hmm.
And that's where I go back to making sure your colors and your fonts are consistent because that's what they're going to see. And you just want to make sure that it is very to the point. It is impactful. That's why we talked about calls to action. Just how can you catch your audience's eye in 5 seconds? And
Hmm.
the best way to do this is trial and error. You got to try new things to reach your audience. So just make it short and sweet and make it impactful. And that is what I have found catches the eye of that generation the most.
Okay. So just to clarify, because guys, Morgan is in social media every single day. I am not in social media every single day. So I need a moment to make sure I've got this right. When you are posting, limit the words that are on that graphic. So
Yes.
maybe it is, if it's a donor site, it's helping us reach her. Like you're helping
Mm-hmm.
us reach her. Maybe that is as many words you would have on the graphic image. And if you have more copy, more things you're wanting to say, then you would put that in like the post caption.
Yes.
Okay. So there is
Yes.
space for it. But even in that post caption, we're not talking about like 3 or 4 paragraphs, are we?
No, no. So with different platforms, Facebook and Twitter or X, those platforms, people typically have wordier captions,
Okay.
copy. Instagram, I would not go over a paragraph.
Okay.
Um, just because on Instagram, it gets to like 2 sentences and then you have to click see more to see the rest of it.
Okay.
So hopefully they are clicking that if it gets cut off a little bit, but you really want your sole goal of the post and your copy to be the first sentence, because
Sure.
people might not see the rest of it. And if you have a long caption, I don't see people consistently reading the whole thing. So yeah, so obviously there's more space in the copy, in the caption of post, but you also don't want to overload that if you don't have to.
That's fair. That's why we're trying to get them to the website, trying to get them to other platforms where it makes more sense
Yes.
for you to take space. Okay, we've done it, Morgan. We have arrived at the final don't. What is it?
Yes, the final don't post pictures without people's permission. Um,
Right.
so make sure that if you have a picture that includes a client, or even if they're in the background, if they are in the picture at all, make sure that
Mm-hmm.
you have permission to post it. And that is making sure you get permission through a media release form, which
Mm-hmm.
you can find online. You can make one. Just make sure that they are actually giving consent to share that photo.
Right.
And on your client-facing account, it can just be a focus on the mom and just her positive experience. Like she got all of her questions asked, or she felt very welcomed and supported. Just make sure
Mm-hmm.
you are still within your mission on sharing her story, because her full story is probably not a place for your
Right.
client facing page. But for your donor facing page, that is a great story to share, and a great photo, again, if you have permission, because that is something that your donors love to hear. They love to hear the full story and how you helped them and how they helped you help them.
Right.
And so that's where the content is a little different for the donor versus client side. But the main story is making sure you have permission, making sure your clients are okay with it, making sure you have those types of forms that say that you are allowed to share this.
I know when I was at the center several years ago, we had a media release form that could be signed by the mom. We had, or the female client. We had, and that could also be used for the male client. And then we also had another one that was giving like parental release media form for the children as well. So if we did have a photo that was going on the donor side of mother and baby or mother, father, and baby, we had media release forms that would be okay and that would be fine. And it's not just going on the donor side. Those are things obviously you can use in testimonials, you can use them at your banquets and walks and everything. Just making sure that you have that release. And then on the client side, obviously, and you touched on this, Morgan, you might just be showing that woman. Maybe you're showing the man, but you're really focusing on that female client. And you're not telling her outcome outside of you answered questions. Like you may not even mention a baby in that scenario. So that's our do's and don'ts. Morgan, how are you feeling about all this great information you've given everybody today?
Yeah, I was very excited to be able to share what I've experienced, what I've learned. Obviously, if you guys have further questions that we could answer in further episodes, or even if you just have questions you want to email us or get to us somehow, that would be great. You can email me at mgerig@extendwebservices.com, and I would be happy to answer any questions. But if there are different topics or questions you would love to hear in further episodes, we would be thrilled to expand upon this and more.
Okay, so mgerig@extendwebservices.com.
Yep.
We would like to use any questions you guys send us to pop on our social media, like Morgan said, to answer in future episodes. And if you have just become enthralled with how Morgan talks about social media, if you are excited about the opportunity of working with her, that is something you can also email her about. If you have questions, you can also email me at dwalker, WALKER, at extendwebservices.com. But we have been very happy to be here with you guys today. We're looking forward to the conversations this might spark. And we're really looking forward to seeing how you guys implement these do's and don'ts on your site. Great. Thank you guys so much for your time.